Hey friends, welcome to Traders Toolkit. Today we are going to see, does the CPR really works in trading or not? Of course, there are many multiple tricks with respect to CPR, but today we will just see only one particular aspect of CPR. So before I get into that, for those who don't know what is a CPR is the central pivot range. That is an indicator that is used as a support or resistance when you apply on any chart. So here I've taken the bank nifty chart, and of course you can apply this indicator on any financial instrument. It could be a stocks, or it could be any currency instruments like USD INR, or even for gold, silver, whatever it could be. So whatever instrument can be tradable, you can apply this indicator to understand where is the support and resistance points. So before I get into that, let's first apply this indicator, the CPR indicator, on this particular chart. And for that, for those who don't know, in TradingView you can get into the indicator section, and there if you just type pivot, you will get this pivot point standard. Otherwise you just type CPR, there will be I normally use my CPR, Subu CPR. There will be other CPRs as well that also you can try it out. So once you apply the CPR, if it is a standard CPR, sorry, for the standard pivot, it will appear something like this, where you will have a line called P. If you look at this line called P, that indicates the pivot, and above you will have some resistance points like R1, R2, R3, and below you have the support levels S1, S2, S3. So but it little more advanced than the standard built-in function is the CPR. CPR stands for central pivot range. So here, if you see here, you just see a single line here, right? So that is the pivot line. But let's say I want to get into a little more advanced ones. I get into the CPR indicator. It's similar to that. It's just that instead of seeing a one single line for pivot, you will have a range. You see there are three blue lines that I'm showing you here. This is called the central pivot range. And again, the lines on top of it represents the resistance levels. The lines below it represents the support levels. So today, the question that we have here is, does the CPR really works in trading, especially in the intraday trading? So to understand that, we are going to see on a randomly on a series on a sequence of days to see whether whatever tricks the CPR is supposed to do, whether it is able to accomplish that objective or not. So first thing, if you look at any CPR books, or any of the YouTube videos that you see on CPR, they will tell you that first you look at the shape of the CPR. So that's the very important step. So as soon as you apply the CPR indicator, the very first thing you should look at it is, what is the shape of the CPR? So when I say the shape of CPR, you look at these three blue lines, that is the CPR, right? The central pivot range. Now, when you look at it, you see for some days, these lines are quite narrow, right? There is no gap in between. And there are some days where you have a huge gap in between, right? Just focus only on the blue lines here. You see here how thin this line is. And there are some days where the line is little wide, and there are even some days where you see this line is quite wide, and here you just see a single thin line. So just focus only on this blue line. The blue lines are the CPR, the central pivot range. The middle blue line is the pivot line. The top line is the top central pivot, and the bottom central pivot. So essentially these three lines is what we call it as a CPR range. And just focus on these range and see what is the shape of this CPR. You look at this one, it's little wide, right? You look at this one, little narrow, right? some are very thin lines, you see, even more narrower than it. So today in the first part we are going to see how this shape of this CPR is going to have a indication on the market trending or a range bound day. So the usual consensus here is what they say. I mean, any CPR tricks or any books that talks about CPR, what it says is, if the CPR is a narrow CPR, when we say narrow, it could be, it's like it's so close, that these three lines are so close to each other, that is considered as a narrow CPR. All right, if the CPR is very narrow, it is considered, or it is most likely will be a trending day. Similarly, if the CPR is quite wide, let's take for example like this. If the CPR is quite wide, then it is most likely will be a range bound day, right? So that is the general consensus among the technical analysts. Now we will see on this particular instrument called Bank Nifty, let's see that whether it is true or not. And there is also one more consensus that I want to tell you is, if the CPR is a narrow, but if it is not a trending, then there is very high probability that the very next day will be a trending day. I repeat, if the CPR is narrow, but today you didn't find a trending day, then it is very likely that the very next day will be a trending day. That is also one general consensus. So to reiterate the same point, if the CPR is a narrow, then it is likely to be a trending day. However, if the CPR is narrow but still it didn't trend today, then it is most likely to trend tomorrow. At the same time, if the CPR is wide, it is most likely to be a range bound day. Now let's look at these two consensus in the chart for this particular instrument, Bank Nifty. You look at this one. This is considered as a kind of a narrow CPR. But is this a trending day? I don't think so. Of course, market gave a trend, but then it reversed. It's not a complete trending day. It's like a partial trending day, I could say, right? But if you look at it, the very next day, it came as a trending day. So this is what that one theory says, that if today's CPR is a narrow CPR, but if it is not so trending, then the very next day is most likely to be a trending day, right? So that is our first consensus. Let's try this out in other random days to see if it really works or not. For example, this is a kind of a narrow CPR. Okay, it is a good trending day, even though the first half of the day is kind of a good trending day, right? Again, like any other indicators, from my experience, I would say that this is all just a general consensus, in the sense that it may work or may not work. But based on the track records, it is usually been observed that if the CPR is a narrow CPR, then it is most likely will be a trending day. So just I'm just looking at this example. On this particular day, if you look at it, it is a very narrow CPR, and it does shows a trending momentum, and you see this gets continued in the next day as well. All right, similarly, if you look at this day, it is little wide CPR, right? So when I say wide, I mean there is no particular definition for a wide. It's just that you have some space for some candles to fit in these spaces. All right, that's what we call it as a wide CPR. Narrow CPR means it's so close that you not even a single candle can pierce into any of these lines. So that is what we call it as a narrow CPR. So you look at this day, okay, you have a wide CPR, and it does has a range bound day. But if you look at this day, it is little closer, but it is supposed to be a trending day, but it is not. right? So that's what I said, right? It may or may not work, but based on the history of charts, it is most likely to work. But if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, right? So we can't do anything on that. But even, I mean, at least we expect next day to be a trending, but still, again, next day is also not a trending. So you keep looking at it, it is still not there, right? So that is why, we cannot take this blindly, saying that yes, if it is a narrow CPR, it is going to be a trending day. No, that is a general consensus, but it may or may not work. All right, but we can expect. Okay, so let's say, for example, that is where you look at 3-4 CPRs together, and then you will draw a conclusion that, hey man, I'm seeing a narrow CPR, I'm seeing a wide CPR, again I'm seeing a narrow CPR, but the market is still in the range bound. So that essentially indicates that you can expect a trending anytime soon. So that is exactly what it indicates. All right, so like this, 4 days continuously the market is in a range bound, and suddenly it went to a trending day, right? So you can also apply these to any of your instruments, and you can see that whether this particular CPR trick, that considering the shape of the CPR, whether it works for you or not. Okay, historically it should work most of the time, but however there are cases where it won't work as well, right? So again, I'm just scrolling the dates randomly, and I'm seeing this is a wide range CPR, and I'm seeing a range bound day. Cool, it works. But here you see it is a, yeah, again it works here, it's a narrow CPR, and I see a trending day. Great, right? So similarly, you just look at it and see if it is a narrow CPR, it is supposed to be a trending day. If not, check for the next day, it is supposed to be a trending day. All right, still if it is not a trending day, then it essentially indicates that you can expect a trending day anytime soon. All right, so apply this in your instruments, whichever instruments you trade, and let me know in the comment section that whether it works or not. So to summarize on this part 1, what we saw is, if only on the shape of the CPR, if the shape is narrow, it is expected to be a trending day either today or tomorrow. If it is a wide range, it is supposed to be a range bound day. Thank you all for watching, and please provide your comments and subscribe to my channel for more valuable contents on this uh, traders toolkit. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Bye.